Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Now it is time for our main speaker tonight. I'm happy to bring on stage Honey. Yeah, Honey.
Wow. Hi, I'm Honey, and I'm an alcoholic. And for those of you who are specialists, I'm an addict too. Thank you, Alan, for asking me to be here. It is an honor and a privilege. It's always an honor and a privilege to speak at a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And you'll have to excuse me, I'm very emotional today. In 3 hours and 13 minutes, I'll have 10 years of sobriety. And wow. You know, when Alan asked me, I said, well, I knew it was January 12th, and I said, so I'll be like the warm-up speaker, right? And he's like, no, I know it's your birthday the next day. And to me, just having that kind of connection, happy birthday to all the birthday people. I always get to see Stevie. We have our birthdays 2 days apart, and you know, when I see him, and it's just like, happy birthday. And you know, to all of the newcomers, welcome. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking or using. And that's what's great. It's really great that that's what I heard, you know, when I first came in, because I didn't know if I was an alcoholic. And I have to say that for about the first year, I wasn't sure if I was an alcoholic, and my sponsor said, well, listen, why don't you do this? Why don't you work all 12 steps, and after you've worked all the steps, if you still think that you're not an alcoholic, what's the worst thing that you have? And that would be the tools for living. And, you know, I heard so many amazing things from this podium today already, you know, and there is a peace that I have in my life today. And what I always wanted was control in my life. You know, I wanted to control every situation. I thought that I actually had control of my life. And by micromanaging everything and controlling the people in my life, and really what I found was that it's by surrender. I mean, there's so many paradoxes in being sober, in working the program, and that is, you know, like to surrender to win. And I didn't know what that meant. And there's some really amazing women in the program who saw me when I came in, and I was so angry and afraid. I couldn't look anyone in the eye. I couldn't look myself in the eye. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror because I had gotten to a point where I didn't recognize the person who was staring back. And I remember Joyce saying to me at a meeting when I was just so broken up, and she said, you know, just let yourself fall back, you know, because I would share that I just felt like I was at this abyss and I was falling, and I had nothing to grab onto. And she said, just surrender, just let go and let yourself fall back, and we'll catch you. And that requires trust, and that's not something that came naturally to me. You know, I'm a child of an alcoholic. My mother is sober over 17 and a half years. And abuse is part of my story. You know, I was physically abused, emotionally abused, sexually abused. That is not why I'm an alcoholic. I come from a family of, my mother's Polish and Ukrainian, and my father is Filipino, Chinese, and Spanish. My grandfather referred to us as those little half-breeds. And this was a man that I loved. I mean, he was my hero. And, you know, and I heard someone talk about shame, you know, and there was a lot of shame that I had from the time I was a little kid of, you know, just wanting to be loved. Breathe. God is everything or God is nothing. And I believe that today. And if you have a problem with the word God, you know, it says that the purpose of our book is to find a power greater than ourselves. You can call it whatever you want. I had a crazy 24 hours, not even 24 hours. And I have a lot of friends in this meeting right now who have heard me share over the past couple months. And I have to tell you, I didn't think I would make it to 10. And I'm not going to be arrogant to say that the next 3 hours and 10 minutes are guaranteed. But being here helps guarantee that I will get those 10 years. But I got a phone call at 2:45 from my newly ex-girlfriend, who we're going to live together. Clearly, I need another program. I bought like a shampoo vac, and I'm like, you know, I'm just going to move down the hall. You know, my daughter has 6 months left of high school. And today, I want to make decisions where, you know, I make a decision. And for me, relationships are a big part of my story. You know, it's a big part of my life. I've always been in relationships. Since December 1984, December 4th to be exact, 1984, I've been single exactly 9 months and some change. So I don't know, I'm single right now. No, I'm not, I mean, but tick, 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 let's see. The relationship I'm in now, it's funny because I'm one of those, like, let's set up the next thing so I can get out of this thing, and then I don't have to think about this, and I'm already in that pink cloud, so to speak. I'm a lesbian, so that's even funnier. So I'm in the pink cloud. Some pinker than others. I love pink, I really do. Oh, dear God. And for the first time, I'm not doing that. You know, I make living amends to my exes. My ex-husband, who I was with for 5 years, my first girlfriend, who I was with for 6 years. And I treated her badly because I had a lot of shame. I had a lot of shame because I felt like there was something wrong with me. And I drank a lot over that. But as I said, none of the things that have happened to me happened to me. I participated in them, and they are not the cause of my alcoholism. Alcohol and drugs were my solution, not my problem. And I really believe that alcohol and drugs saved my life for a very long time. And why I think a lot of people go out, because I ask people, my friends in the program, when they go out, I want to know. And a lot of us run away. And you know, and if you've relapsed and you've gone out and you feel like some sort of shame, or you feel like, you know, people, you know, they're so full of it, and AA, you know, it's like the door's always open, and then they don't really talk to me. Sometimes it's just fear, you know? But it's a giant lifeboat. I love picturing AA as like this lifeboat where, you know, we just are pulling people on. And some people make a choice to get back in the water. And unfortunately, some don't make it back. You know, I've buried 2 sponsees. And that's sad. And, you know, to say that they paid the supreme 12th step. That their death allows me to have life. I don't know that I believe that, but I do believe that it's a gift. So at 2:45 this morning, I get a phone call from my new ex-partner, roommate, and she says, I've got a situation. And I was like, I was like sound asleep. And she said, I got pulled over and was trying to say it, and I said, did you get a DUI? And she said, yes. So I said, okay, where do I need to go? She goes, I just need you to come here and move the car, and then they've got to do this and that. And this officer was really great. Mostly they just impound your car, they tow it off, and so you've got that $380 to deal with, aside from whatever you've got to deal with at the police station. And when I drove there, and the first thing that the police officer asked me is, have you been drinking tonight? Do you have valid ID? And I know 10 years ago today, I'd have been like, sorry, sweetie, I'll see you, tomorrow morning, because I'd have been too afraid to drive there. And the whole time I was driving there, I thought, God has a sense of humor, It's like I'm smiling driving there, and I'm thinking, I may be the only big book she ever sees. And that's part of why I didn't just throw her away. And I'm in a lot of pain over this breakup. And I have friends who are here because they know what I'm going through. And I went home, and this officer then, and the thing is like looking at her handcuffed, looking at me. Of course, she can never hear this tape. If I should bring her to the meeting, they'll be like, oh, so you're the one, yeah. No, so it's like handcuffed and looking at her, and it's just like, and that shame. And I realized it's about treating her like the newcomer. And the first thing she said to me was, I'm sorry. I don't know if you guys can relate to it, but I was saying I'm sorry all the time. And I realized that I don't have the need to do that as much anymore. And today I can say things like, I'm sorry you're going through this. And she said to me, you don't have to say that. And I said, but I mean it. I said, I didn't wish this upon you. And I touched her face, and the last thing I said to her was, pray. And Alan and I were talking about this, he was telling me what last time he was handcuffed, and you're like, when it's you're like, this happened, and I didn't eat, or, it's like the stories are going, and I was listening to her tell the story, and talking, and it's like, listen, you go home and you go to sleep, don't worry, you can come and pick me up at after you wake up, I know you've got a very busy day, and you can come at 9. Well, the call at 6:30 was not like, come when you want. It's like, oh my God, this is so bad, this is so crazy. And I got to walk through a situation in sobriety where my brother was in a foreign prison for 3+ years for going on vacation. And, and it's funny how a lot of times people will judge that. Everything I've judged, by the way, everything that I have judged in AA, I have been faced with. Everything. As a group, we have no opinion on outside issues. As a human being, I got opinions on everything. And the thing that I've learned, and am learning, is restraint of pen and tongue. And mostly because that gnawing feeling after I say something that I'm gonna have to go back and make amends. God, I hate that. And, so I went to my meeting this morning. The police officer calls me at 5. She still hasn't been booked, but I just want to keep you posted. Because she really thinks like I'm sitting up waiting to find out. I went back home, I got the dogs in bed, I'm curled up with the dogs, I'm asleep. And every hour this cop is calling me, and then it's 6 something. she just got booked, and, and it's not funny, I mean, we laugh about things in here, but, it's like, and my daughter wakes up, okay, so my daughter comes in, and she's like, she asks, where is she? And I said, in jail. And my kid, bless her, because my kid, it's like sometimes, I made a decision to date somebody who was considerably younger than me. For those of you who need to know, I'm 41, and, I've got a 17-year-old daughter, and sometimes I feel like I have two kids, She's 30, she's not a teenager. I have no opinion on that. But anyway, so, I spoke to her. It's like, I'll be there, and I decide to go to the meeting, and I go and I feed the meter where I left her car, and then I go to the meeting, and then my friend drove me to get her car, and I'm driving there, and I'm just like, God, I'm so full of humility, you guys. Because I get, like, no pun intended, I get the burning bush variety of spirituality. Any takers? No, I'm joking. I'm teasing. And I'm just driving there, and I'm just thinking, I'm like imagining what she's going through, So anyway, I mean, that long story short, it was like, she's calling me every 10 minutes, where are you? And I said, I am right outside the door. I am right outside the door, but they will not let me see you. We have a choice. Either I push for them to let me visit you, and that's going to push your release at least 2 hours. So, it's 1 o'clock when they finally release her, and my phone's ringing. And my phone is ringing from people in the program, my friends, who are asking how I'm doing, and I'm not sharing this to humiliate her. I'm sharing this because somebody in this room can relate. I said I had no opinion on outside issues today, but, I used to have opinions about things like medication, And in the book it says, God has brought doctors and psychiatrists and all these people into our lives. And I shared that, and I used to share it when I was really newly sober. I'd be like, yeah, on page whatever it was, 63. This is what it says. So for those of you who have an opinion on outside issues, but I had to know that, and I had to believe that, because when I hit a depression at 6 years that I could not get out of, and the only option to me was to kill myself. And people said, if you kill yourself in the first 5 years, you're killing the wrong person. What do you do at 6? And, and we can laugh about that in here. And there's somebody, trust me, there is one person sitting in this room that is thinking, I want out. Just tell the truth. Tell the truth. Reach out to somebody. You just don't know if that person sitting next to you, or that person that you would never, ever speak to in this room, could be the person who saves your life. My friend Mike will ask me to go speak on a panel at the most inopportune moments in my sobriety. It's like, I'm like, I've got this event, or I've got something fabulous happening. Hey, honey, can you come to, speak on my panel, and he'll like book 5 people. I know I'm going to go there. I'm going to have 5 minutes. And what I learned is to say yes. So growing up in this very dysfunctional family, my mother was an alcoholic, and, and I was not the pretty one growing up. I have a younger sister who's gorgeous, and I was the tomboy, and, and I had all kinds of issues. I got discovered, and I got to go and model. And that was something that was very, very tricky for me, because I had no self-esteem. And something I learned in the rooms, which, it's like you can act your way into right thinking. Taking the next right step. What's the next right action? It doesn't matter what I'm thinking or what I'm feeling. All that matters is what I'm doing. So, if I want self-esteem, do esteemable acts, helping the old lady across the street, that kind of thing. And, And I had a belief in God. Growing up, we were Catholic, and and I had a certain idea of God. And when I got sober, my sponsor had me write on every single step. It was like, what's your current concept of God? My current concept of God was, this all-powerful God, this punishing God, and then I got to write, what would a perfect God look like if you could create one? And, it all sounded like a whole load of hooey, and, and I'm like, okay, this is what it would look like. And today, you can breathe in God and exhale is, and I know the difference between God's will and my will. Because my will never feels good. My will usually has some defect of character that I have attached to it. Ego or, gluttony, greed, lust. And, and everything's God-given. Everything that I feel, everything that I think, everything I want to do. And then I just pause and wait for the next right action. But, I went off and I had this career, and I just, figured I'll just focus on the doing, of doing everything perfect. And what ended up happening was I met this man, and bless him, on December 4th, 1984. And, and shortly after, 3 months later, he asked me to marry him. And I'm like, sure, why not, He's the first guy who knew what he was doing. And, what you doing down there? Oh, sure, I'll marry you, He is one of my best friends today. Seriously. But I had, when I got sober and I made amends to him, I didn't realize that he carried with him for the longest time that he thought he had done something to me that made me the way I am, And we know, what kind of a terrible burden is that to take onto yourself to think that you're that powerful? I don't make someone drink, I can't keep someone sober. That's how I deal with my sponsees. And with my ex-husband, I remember the day where he had lost his job and his girlfriend within 48 hours. And he said to our 11-year-old daughter, I'm moving back to Paris because there's nothing here for me. Now, that was devastating to her. And she had to, and I knew that there was going to be repercussions, but what I was able to recognize because I was sober was the pain that he was going through. And I said, why don't we get together for a drink? He goes, a drink? He's French. A drink? And I said, well, a coffee. And I sat there and I looked at him in the eyes and I said, whatever you're thinking, Zoe needs you. And you're going through something right now, and I want to give you the time to do what you need to do. Please don't ever say that to our daughter again, And I said, but she needs you. She needs to have you in her life. I said, and taking yourself out is not the solution. And he sat there and cried. And the only reason I could recognize that, God bless you, is that I had felt it. I had sponsored people who would share things like that. I would hear it in the rooms. And, and here's this man that I met when I was 17, and here we are, and many years later. And, and it's funny to see where we are all today. And my first girlfriend, I had a lot of shame about that, and I drank a lot. And that happened to have been, took place right when my mother's friends came to me as the head of the family, and I'm the middle child. And they said, we think your mother has a drinking problem. And I've got a 2-week-old baby, and I'm 23. And I'm like, great, this is great. It took 6 weeks, we did an intervention, and again, I remember that day tricking my mother into going to this lunch. And, and she said, she was so funny because everybody had practiced, what they were going to say and everything else. We never called him an alcoholic. And that really is true. It's not for us to decide. We say we're alcoholics, period. but you can tell someone you think they might have a drinking problem, and it was a very tough love thing. And the reason I share this is because, sometimes, and this is how I came into AA, really was through another program, but my mom was so desperate for help, and she didn't think there was any help. And I don't know if anyone can relate to the fact that you're out there and you're doing and you're on your own, and she's a single mother and she's got 3 kids and never had any help from my father. And the thing is that she didn't know there was help out there. And what we know in here, we're the lucky ones. We are the lucky ones because we know that there is help and there's hope. And the 2 most important words an alcoholic could ever say, or an addict, is help me. The other one is please God, which a lot of us say too, so we're handcuffed, And she got sober. And one of the things when she came out, she was so excited, and she was like, throwing around all of her little sayings, let go and let God, and, first things first, and all this stuff. And I was like, screw you. I need a babysitter, And then, because that little bit of truth suddenly infiltrated into my life through AA, I didn't even know it was happening through AA, I started to have this change and felt that I was not living in my truth. And, but rather than getting sober, I drank more. And I make living amends to my first girlfriend because I did not treat her well. I did not treat her the way you treat someone when you are in a loving relationship because I had a lot of shame. Shame is a very big part of my story. And today, I love who I am. I live in my truth. And, I really don't care what someone thinks about my life choice. We're spending a very short amount of time together tonight, and then you'll go back to thinking about yourselves, and some of you already are, and and me too. And I don't have to live by what, my family want or this or that, and it's just like I just try to be a loving person, and it's tough, because I made a choice to be out there in a very public way in the past couple years, and and it's hard when people come at you with their dogma and their religious beliefs, and what a bad mother you must be to, and it's just like I had no time for that, My mother will say, just don't rent space in your head. My mother's sober in New York, and I'm from New York, and, back there it's just like, it's not as warm and fuzzy, sometimes it's just like, just shut up and listen, And I'm grateful for Southern California sobriety. LA is an amazing place to get sober, but I've also had the gift of traveling, and Alan and I were talking about Paris, I got to go to meetings when I was in Paris, which is where I hit my bottom. So to fast forward, in December of 1996, I was in a brand new relationship, yet again, my anniversary dates and my breakup dates were always like, I'd always get that ex-girlfriend going, so when is your anniversary date? I'm like, what day did we break up? So it was like always like a day, until it wasn't. And then they just were overlapping. Like, I don't know what my anniversary date is right now, but it doesn't matter anymore because now we're roommates. Oh, well. I know approximately when it is. But, I got back and I had actually, there were no more lines. I'd snorted all of those, but there was no moral line, It was like, I'd just rub that line out, and it was like, in things that I judged. I judged my father for never being, faithful to my mother, again, it was like the apple did not fall far from the tree. And, and I got to be faced with that. And I was standing there, with my partner at the time, and she was just like, she said, I have never loved someone as much as I love you, and I've never been hurt by someone as much. And as she walked out the door, I said, please don't go, I think I have a problem. And I swear to you, it's about 10 years ago at this very moment. And my last drink that day was I had half a Heineken, not knowing that was going to be my last drink. I had definitely had enough throughout the holidays, and I was still green and toxic, and and after I said those words, I thought, oh dear God, what did I say? I wanted to pull them back because it was like, well, now if I'm going to stay in this relationship, I'm going to have to not drink. So I stopped drinking, drugs, smoking, like everything on the same day. Went into like a crazy kind of toxic shock, did a lot of yoga. And I white-knuckled my sobriety for the first 5 months, doing it my way. And what I can tell you today is my way does not work. My way doesn't work. I don't have an original thought or idea about sobriety. I cannot transmit something I haven't got. I finally, my Eskimo into the rooms is someone who's not sober today. And at that time, she had like 19 years. And I still have the big book that she gave me. And she wrote in the book, and I open it up all the time, and it says, remember, you are the gift. I couldn't even imagine being the gift to anybody, or that I had anything that could help someone else. I always thought it was about how much money I made. And when I got sober, I had, 5 national commercials, billboards, a cover of a magazine, and I can tell you, I was spiritually bankrupt. And I lost everything in sobriety. And going through the bankruptcy, going through putting my dog to sleep, losing my house, losing my car, losing everything. And I'd say to my sponsor, you don't understand. Like I just got served papers. You don't understand. And he'd say, what step are you on? And I didn't understand what he was getting at. My simple direction was, you're going to make 5 phone calls a day. Someone with more time, someone with less time, someone with the same time. You're going to call central office, and you're going to thank them for being there. Then you're going to call me when you've made those calls. Do you want to know why? Sure. Because if you don't use the phone when you don't need it, you're not going to use it when you need it. And it's one of the greatest tools that I have in my recovery. You're going to go to at least 6 meetings a week on 6 different days and take 3 commitments at 3 of those meetings. And I mopped the log cabin for 4 years. And there are people here who saw me come in, and I couldn't look people in the eye. And the best I could do was look at those floors and mop and mop and mop. And they don't come clean. And I love like newcomers. It's like, yeah, I think we should get some we should get some cleaner, and we should redo the floors, and we should do this, and it's just like, that's not the point. I got clean. I got clean. You're going to greet. I do not stand around with people ever that I don't know and not introduce myself. I got that from a greeting commitment. I didn't have any tools. I didn't have a rule book. There's certain things, etiquette, my father would be like, this is how you eat, don't. There were like things that I learned, but the tools for living, which is what I learned in the program, were all based on some commitment that I took. Because when you make a commitment to meet someone at a meeting, it'll get you there. And I remember someone telling me I was a flake at the beginning of, my sobriety, because I would say, oh yeah, let's meet, let's do this, and then I'd go, I really don't want to. And what I've learned is that it doesn't matter what I want to do. I wanted to sleep in this morning because I wasn't feeling good. And I had a fever last night, and I've got a very fabulous, important weekend. I'm being flown somewhere tomorrow, and yada, yada, yada. And my girlfriend said to me, I've been waiting for you to say, I told you so. She said that to me on the phone. She called me 12 times. I have them all on my phone. I was just looking. I've been counting them. And I said, if you really think that I would have said that to you, then you don't understand me. And the thing is that I did something not that long ago that I wasn't proud of. You know, and on Christmas Day, we had this fight. And I had said to God, please, I don't want to break up on Christmas. And at 12:06, we had a fight because I didn't like the way she was talking to my daughter. And I had the 20 questions. Why don't you take a look at these, you know? And I had already left them, like, with other papers on my nightstand. And she admitted to me later that she had read them at least 4 or 5 times. But I threw them at her. And I said, why don't you read these? You know, and she's like, fuck you. And I'm like, fuck you. And then she takes her dog and she's going out. And, you know, and I'm like, and she's been drinking. And the next day, I made amends to her and to the program. And I said, it is not a representation of the program that saved my life. And I was acting out of fear and self-centeredness. And, you know, I don't think you have a problem. Lying. I don't think you have a problem. I said, you know, and it's really not about that I have a problem. I have a problem. And I have been behaving in a way that is not aligned with how I'm thinking and feeling. And I have behaved in a way for a long time in this relationship that it's okay for you to drink, it's okay to have alcohol in the house, and this is not okay for me. And you know, it's like I changed the rules of the game. So that's why I'm working on a transition period today, and not on, like, you know, pack your shit and go, or I'm gonna pack mine up and go. You know, my actions affect a lot of people. You know, they affect our 3 dogs, the 2 cats, and my kid, who the gift today is that my kid is not parenting me. And she said to me that night, she said, you know, it reminds me a bit, Mom, of when you used to drink. And that's humbling. Because what a gift that I got sober when she was 7. AA is not for people who need it. It's not for people who want it. It's certainly not for people who deserve it. You know, let's not even get into what we deserve, because I wouldn't be here. It's for people who do it. You don't have to go out to start over. Just put your head back on the pillow, start over. Say a prayer, start over. I was in clubs, bars, and events more this year for a good time than I was at meetings. So I got back to my foundation, and about 3 months ago, I started going to meetings every day, making phone calls, calling central office, reaching my hand out to newcomers, taking commitments, and I am so blessed to have a foundation. Grace is an undeserved gift. I don't deserve this, you know. I get to. I don't have to do anything in my life today. I get to do everything I get to do. I get to go down there. I get to sit in that police station. I get to thank the officer. I get to thank all of them. And I really don't take myself seriously, but I take the program seriously. And the fact is that I may be the only big book somebody sees. It's a program of attraction and not promotion. And really, it's about finding a power greater than yourself. Get a sponsor, work the steps, the traditions. It's all in the book. And again, my ball's going to drop soon. And I am just so grateful to be here tonight. Thank you for letting me share.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.